I'm just gonna warn you off top. I'm a terrible interviewer. I forget
Oh,
everything. I get nervous and go blank.
we're both screwed. This is gonna be great. I'm terrible.
Right? Yeah, I think they think too highly of us.
Right? I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, in the spirit of that, how do you feel?
I feel, thanks for asking that. I mean,
Just in general, and not even just with the awards, just
yeah.
like, and you could add it in, but just in general, you know.
Well, I had a tough time. I had a tough time with, like jumping back into what is partly performative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like performance really took a stark, like, I just saw performance a little bit clearer for what it was. You know, I was answering questions at the beginning of the press tour, and I was like, I thought I was relaxed, and then we went through some stuff during this pandemic, like really scary things. And after that happened, I was like, oh, there's another level of awareness, and I keep sitting into that pocket, and like you're like, oh wow, like I was still performing, and that is something maybe that we all do. This is such a random thought, but like I connect it to kind of your performance of like watching you as Billy. The thing that stood out to me the most was I was like, wow. And please tell me if I'm projecting, but like I was like, whoa, that is the pain of a person who knows something that nobody else knows.
Oh my God, you hit it on the head in a way that I have not in this entire press tour. No one has said that in this entire tour. That's like, I guess it's the difference between two artists sort of communicating.
Yeah.
No, it was absolutely that. You know, I always say Billie Holiday was a 2021 person living in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. You know what I mean? It was just, and people, it goes to the question, people, you know, her activism, do you think, you know, like they asked, was she willing to sacrifice for her activism? Do you think she knew she was an activist? And I was like, no, she just knew. And maybe she knows what no one else knows. And I think she also knows and is willing to speak about what no one else is willing to admit. You know,
Yes.
There's not one person back then at the time, truly, I think it's culturally acceptable lynching people, but generally speaking, it's a horrific act, right? You're doing it because you want to inflict pain and shame and, you know, and on a person. So I think also the pain of someone who's willing to talk about, you know, what's happening, and a pain from someone who's not willing to live. You know, one of the things she would always say in her life was, I don't want to be anybody's damn maid. You know what I mean? And so I think that it was just the pain of a Black queer woman saying, I want to live freely. I realize it's going to probably cost me my life, basically. But I'm, you know, willing to do it anyway. So
yeah,
no, you totally understand that. And
that's what you did. It was so incredible watching you, because I was like, you almost have to do nothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like
it's so funny. You sound like Lee right now. Lee's like, literally, this was our running joke on set. Like Lee would come in and he'd be like, okay, cut it in half. Then you cut it in half. And then he'd be like, do nothing. Like, oh, all right, cool.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a madman's, you know, kind of try the willingness to sort of sacrifice maybe family or whatever to like, but this also this idea that I'm helping them. Like I'm helping them, and they don't see it now, but they will. So I don't know. I wonder how much of, I just wonder your thoughts on it. And feeling thoughts because I loved it, but.
Oh, I appreciate it. No, I mean, like you're talking on like, back to that idea of just awareness, right? Like, you know, Jacob, like Trey's character, like he's doing what he thinks is supposed to be the right thing. And so he is vindicated in some way because he has some sort of purity of intention. You know, so I think about that a lot, of just like, I don't want to belabor this point, but like, I really did appreciate how your performance didn't need to sell. It was just it lived into your body. And like, that's when, you know, I deeply respect that work, because you know, you did so much of the internal work that was really beautiful.
Thank you. And likewise. Just in general, I think this is my question to actors in general, is like, how did you go from, I don't know how long you prepared. So really first, how long were you preparing for this role? And then secondly, coming out of it, going right into a pandemic, then going right into award season with all this stuff. Like, are you still processing, Jacob? Are you still, okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? Like the journey hasn't stopped with this movie because I still have to talk about it. I still have to like reflect it back. It reflects back to me based on like what the outside world perceives of me. And that's kind of like this moment, right? Is that like, I think if we were out there shaking hands and like, you know, schmoozing and doing the thing and like talking to people and really getting people one-on-one talking to us, it maybe would have felt more immersive. And I don't know whether that would have been a good thing or a bad thing, but for me, I was like, there's an outside understanding of who I am. And then there's me just as a dad waking up with like deep bags under my eyes, with my kids you know what I mean? And like trying to be a good husband and trying to be present, but like failing every day. And so like you juxtapose that to like the nomination for an Oscar and you're like, I don't know. I feel like a bum, like a regular bum, like just, you know, I'm just me.
That's why I was like, people like, your life must be amazing. I'm like, well, you should look at my house. My house is any representation of how amazing it is. It's not looking too great.
There's one corner that's like really clean. That's it.
Just the one I'm in.
The Zoom corner.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, I mean, like I think about that a lot too, because like, you know, I'm sure you've been given so many of the same questions over and over, and I get that. Like people need to understand, and people need to be able to write about it or put it in something packageable so that they can deliver it. But
of course.
It's so much more complex, and it makes me think about like I'm curious about like, because I had the similar thing. I heard that you were reluctant to take the role, and I'm not curious about like why you were reluctant, because I feel like I understand to some degree, but more like what happened after you tipped? Like what happened after you're like, all right, I'm going to take it. Like, I'm just going to do it.
You know, for me, it was a lot of factors, and I am a very spiritual person, which I want to talk about with your movie as well too, because the relationship between you and Paul is amazing. And like, there are a lot of listening to her, not just for her tone of voice, but for where she is, you know, actually in her mind. Is she sober? Is she high? Is she drunk? Is she tired? Is she happy? Is she, and listening to where she's at, like the things that she, like there's one clip, okay, sorry, I'm long-winded, but
oh no, please.
Her when she's in like she's just with a band, you know, like rehearsal space, whatever. And they're asking her about the set list, you know what I mean? They're like 13 songs, you know, so 13, what are we doing for 13 songs? We need something, whatever. And she goes, yeah, and I need a cigarette. You know what I mean? Like, and it was so just funny, those things. And they're like, well, 13, and we'll take off that 13. I hate that song. And really it's funny because, you know, you listen to it and go, clearly she's irritated. You know what I mean? And she's saying she doesn't want 13, but what she's really saying, she does not want to be talking to this person. Like you can hear it, you know what I mean? So just all of that, you know, the stuff that you know, the stuff that you do, and it's
right. Like, I mean, like we do that too, where you're just like, oh, I know that person, or like the internet does that really obviously now, where it's like you can get the starter pack of everybody. You can be like, oh, that person's this person. It's like they're not. They're like a deep, you know, they have multitudes. And so, you know, I had to reconcile with the way that I understood my parents' generation, because I was talking about them and they hadn't been really, you know, humanized. I think a lot of portrayals about them are usually like embedded in a little bit of shame, where it's not shameful of them. It's just more like the concept of a first generation immigrant for a second generation kid is like this weird gate you got to pass through to be like, hey, like I want to feel American, but like this didn't allow me to. And like you look at them as concepts sometimes because the language too. And so I had to confront that. I had to look there in my face to be like, do I see my dad in his fullness? I feel like I do, but do I? And I think touching that stuff was really scary because I knew I was going to be touching something that was really precious to a lot of people. And that freaked me out because, you know, I'm also like, I don't like being not liked.
Right. It's
You
all
know?
good. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. That's,
Yeah.
I think that builds up that skin, right? I mean, for me, you brought up faith, and in my faith, something we talk about is being refined by fire. You know what I mean? And so it's very interesting. I see what you mean about craving those moments, because sometimes if it feels too comfortable, too easy, too safe, or oh, I'm just killing it all the time, those moments, especially as you get older, you begin to realize how much you need them. You know what I mean? You're not actually developing, I think, into a
Well, you need a human being, and you know, maybe people won't be able to like understand that and like contain it in a article or something, but the power of that is, I think, very profound, of just like remembering that we all are human.
yeah. It really helped to ground me, for the first time in quite a while since the movie. This is a this is the crux, at the crux of my identity now in this season.
Yeah.
So similar but completely different. Whereas, and that's kind of what we've been doing. The light sort of exposes things, right? And is healing, and it's all of these things. And so that really just kind of made me realize, all right, this is who I am in this season. That's part of who I'm supposed to be.
Cool.
And then it aligns with what we've kind of been doing with the movie and shedding light and different things. So I hope that answered your question. I know
No, that is.
tangent, but
No. That's not. I mean, I'm interested in all this stuff. I mean, that's exactly how I feel too. Which is like, but it also does take a bravery that I think is so great, of being able to kind of throw away the baggage of the past. You know.
it's crazy. Like my friend was saying it the other day. I was like, yeah, that she's not here anymore. You know what I mean? Of course,
Yeah.
we're always some version of ourselves, right? We're constantly evolving, constantly growing. And she was like, oh my God. She was like, that's so sad. And I kind of looked at her and I was like, yeah, like and I realized I am mourning, you know what I mean? Who that person. And I realized that I couldn't find me or whoever that old person was when I was on set. And Lee asked me, he was like, okay, give me Andra. I don't want Billy for this scene. Give me Andra. And I had a moment like you. I just started bawling, and I felt so uncomfortable and out of my skin, desperately inside myself, trying to find. Then I felt like I was trying to copy mannerisms of myself. You know what I mean? It was pretty weird. It was like watching a person, and then I felt like I was doing an impersonation of Andra Day, right? Like, and my friend, my creative director, who was on set with me, she was helping assist me. She was like, that was the most bizarre shit ever. I was like, I was waiting to see the person that I knew, and then, so that's the moment that I knew. And so, yeah, I really got to a point where I had to grieve not only Billy, you know what I mean, even though she's never fully going to be gone, but I had to grieve. It was like it felt forced upon me. Like I didn't know that you didn't tell me before that embarking on this role, I would have to say goodbye to that person. I wish you would have told me, and let me know, So, so it definitely feels like the loss of a
That gives me chills. That gives me chills because I feel that very much. That's how I like. And I wonder if it's yes, it is saying goodbye to that old person, but it's also like an expansion, so that you don't
absolutely
right. Like you don't have to hold on to that last. It's just of you now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing I was going to say too. It's like you grieve because I was unaware that it was going to happen. I was not prepared really. I felt, you know what I mean? But I do know but I'm getting to a place now. It's almost a bit of a celebration. You know what I mean? It was scary at first and it was sad at first until I realized oh, I don't have to go back to get that other person because this movie, this person, Billy, I'm pointing here because there's a picture of her, but Billie Holiday, all of these things, I believe, for my faith, God is using these things to inform who I'm supposed to be in this season. So it's like, I'm finally getting to a place where it feels a little less of a fight of like, okay, I think that's a huge, huge part of it. So I also wanted to ask you something as well too about you when you first, got the script, right? Was it, did you first hear just about the concept, or were you just sent the script first?
I was just, so they just sent me the script. I knew Isaac because Isaac is my wife's cousin, but we never really talked before, nor did we really talk about working. I didn't even know he was directing anymore. And then all of a sudden, we share an agent, and she was like, here's a script that Isaac wrote. I'm like, what? So
Wow.
I read it and I was, yeah, finish your question. I'm sorry, we were going to ask.
No, no, that answers actually part of my question as well. But just when you first got it, like, was it sort of, were you right away like, I am in, this is me, or were, because I know you said you had hesitations, and, or was it like, I really wanted, like, what work kind of did you guys do on Jacob, or were you really involved at all in that? Or was it kind of fully realized by the time you got it,
Well, it connects to that statement you made about just kind of like, we're locked into the view of like the white male patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
When I read it, it felt liberated. Because, I think, the depictions of racism in it are at times real, meaning like the ways in which the subtlety of how it works and just the misunderstandings and like just the benign nature of those interactions.
Yes.
But it wasn't that the script was ignoring that racism happens to people or Asian people or anyone. It was just more like, this is a story about this family.
Yep.
And when they go home, they're not thinking about you.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I loved about it. When I say tunnel vision, I was like, they were locked in. They were tapped all the way in.
Exactly, right? It's like, we're not even going to let you in our story because we're not thinking about you.
I love it. And it was so beautiful. And that's why I feel like, I think it's grabbing people so much. It is a fully realized family. These are fully realized people, as individuals and as a unit. It was incredible.
And I think the important part then at the end of it all is that, like, sure, it could be like, we're not thinking about you, but also we're not thinking about you, so now you can access us.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So how long were you preparing for this role? So I feel bad sometimes I ask such elementary questions. But
No. We started knowing that it was going to be made like January of 2018 going into 2019. And then I knew we were starting in the summer. So I had like a whole 4 months to just think about it, and I'm lucky too, because like, I'm also living a dad life, and I'm also living a life where my wife has to sacrifice for what is, I can justify it in my head to be like, I'm doing this for the family, and I am, but also, she's holding up the whole thing, like the whole, so I could draw from certain things that I could, understand about, just like, I think when it clicked for me was, I was like, oh, I am my father. Like, I am.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah.
I don't know if you felt that same way about like Billy, but like at some point where you're like, oh, I am Billy right now.
Absolutely. No, it's funny because people actually, when it clicked for me, I mean, I don't even know if it clicked earlier.
It just kind of just like moves through you, and like,
it's like you don't really. It was a gradual thing, obviously, because like I said, the time sort of that had passed, so it was sort of this, everybody's like, when were you really like, I'm Billy? And I'm like, I don't know. It just was a slipping into her. You know what I mean? It was like constantly just a slope, of into her, or I guess ascension rather, maybe into her, but I will say there's a moment, when we're on set and you're in wardrobe, and they ask you, wardrobe, obviously, especially when you're doing a period, so like a different period, and there's something about it, but it didn't feel, I think everybody thinks it's this aha moment of like, oh my gosh, okay, now I feel like Billy. Now I'm like, I've been feeling like her for, you know what I mean? She's on my new record. You know what I mean? Like, she's imprinted in my family and my relationships and my, there are people who only know me on this side, and, and that's familiar to them. Me as Billy is familiar to them, so it was more like, okay, there I am. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? It felt like that. Turning around to see is like, oh, there I am. Like, it just feels like the physical sort of caught up to what you're feeling internally already.
I feel parallel to Jacob's journey as an actor, as myself, which was like, I was so busy trying to control it and squeeze and make it what I thought it was, that I forgot to be aware of what was happening. Because the third take, I just go and I'm in it, and I look over and I look at Yeti, who plays Monica, and she's such an incredible actor, and she's bawling and sobbing, for the third take in a row, like in a way where I was like, oh, that's real. And one is a testament to her skill and just how great she is of an actor, but also I was made deeply aware. I was like, oh, Jacob doesn't cry here. Monica cries here.
Yeah.
He's been holding the family up.
I was just thinking, oh.
You know what I mean?
Bro, literally hearing you talk about it and thinking about that is thinking about the scene. Oh my God, this is, so I now have goosebumps because of you speaking about that. Because even as you're talking through it, you're telling me, and I'm like, I'm trying to cry and I'm like thinking to myself, but that's Jacob. Like, that is him. You know what I mean? He is that. So even the idea that, okay, I just need to let it go and be present, but that's still him thinking about, it needs to, everything is this thought force, So it's very interesting that thought process. I mean, anyway, the performance was phenomenal, but not just because of the crying or for the because you're it's so funny, even you describing it, you were so locked in that's you gave Jacob, that's exactly what I feel like. If he was on set acting and playing himself, he would have probably been super obsessed about emotion now and same shit. It has to be this and it has to be so. That's actually really, it's so funny how those things can sort of net you. You know what I mean? Like the stuff you think you got to overcome, or the stuff you think you have to, like, even the you thinking you have to overcome it is actually netting you the person. You know what I mean? And
I think there's something right about what you said about listening. It's like once you start listening, it's right there. It tells you.
Yeah, absolutely. But why is it so hard though? Like, I keep thinking like we could have this conversation, and then probably if I go on another set, I'm gonna overthink every fucking thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, why?
Yeah.
Well, Stephen, obviously, as you can tell, I have so enjoyed talking to you. And again, just the movie is amazing. Your performance is amazing. You were just, so tapped in. It's a much deeper way to describe it than that. But you were amazing. I was so moved, and it has been truly a joy. And hopefully this is not the last time that we do this.
No, can't be. Andra, thank you for this conversation. And you crushed it so hard. I'm so, thank you for your performance too. And thanks for this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's do it again.
Yeah.